I'm Joe Gillard, editor of ISE Magazine, and today I am here with Jeff Heynen from Dell'Oro Group, and we're going to talk a little bit about tariffs and how they relate to broadband. So thank you, Jeff, for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
The first question I have, so there's a lot of uncertainty. There was an update today about tariffs coming from the Trump administration, but I want to talk a little about well, what you think is the biggest tariff-related concern that should be keeping broadband providers up at night right now.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a very important question, and this is such a fluid situation that it's really difficult to really see what the impact is going to be. But I think if you're an ISP that's a broadband provider, I think there are two concerns that you really have right now with respect to the tariffs. The first is what additional costs am I going to have to bear for the equipment that I'm purchasing that may have components that are sourced from outside the United States or assembled outside the United States that would definitely be impacted by these tariffs? So that's something that as you're budgeting to, especially those that are in fiber expansion mode, they certainly have to factor that into their overall costs and their capital expenditure budgets. The second thing that I think they're also worried about simultaneously is whether or not they're going to have equipment available to satisfy the demand that they have for their network expansions. I've been talking to a lot of vendors over the last few weeks as this kind of tariff and trade war has unfolded and changed and switched and flip-flopped. And universally, I think it's pretty clear that the demand for equipment and for growth is still there. And so that's good news for the vendors and equipment suppliers. Of course, now they are on the hook for trying to figure out what's the best way to navigate the current situation. Do they need to move their manufacturing facilities? Do they need to source components from somewhere else? And all in all, I mean, I think they want stability in their supply chains, and of course, their end customers, these service providers, they also want stability in their supply chains, and they also want to know what additional costs they're going to have to bear as they continue to build out their networks.
Well, thank you for clearing up some of that. It's great to have a source that understands us a little bit better for our viewers and our readers. So I appreciate you clearing some of those questions up. Are there any upsides to this you can see for the broadband industry?
It's difficult to see upsides here in the short term. Certainly, the long-term intended goal of the tariffs, right, to increase manufacturing and onshore manufacturing here to the United States is a goal that's been something that many industries outside of broadband and telecom have had for some time. And there have been obviously different methods used to achieve those goals. I mean, the CHIPS Act, for example, has helped to bring in lots of semiconductor investment and fabs where we didn't have that infrastructure before. And so there is a possibility that in the longer term, once things are settled, that there will be more manufacturing of important components and electronics here that the broadband industry uses, stateside. And I think that's the upside, and hopefully that means that there will be some more stability in the supply chains overall, which these operators and equipment vendors, having just come off of COVID and this rapid increase in purchasing, and then spending the last 2 years of operators finally drawing down their equipment inventory to the point where they're now at stable purchasing rates. They don't want to go through that again. The last thing that an operator wants and the last thing that an equipment vendor wants is to have equipment sitting idle in warehouses that's not generating revenue, because there's a finite timeline for that equipment to exist in a network before you run the risk of age and failure rates. And we certainly know that you don't want that when you're providing a highly valuable service like broadband. So if you're buying equipment, you're buying it to put it into your network and to start generating revenue off of that by passing broadband traffic. You don't want it sitting idle, and that's again the last thing that anybody wants.
Do you see there being any effects when it comes to small providers versus big providers that would be different?
Well, big providers always have the luxury, of course, of being able to purchase in much larger volumes, whether that's cable modems or PON ONTs or any type of infrastructure. So they have typically more flexibility in terms of negotiating pricing. Smaller operators don't typically have that flexibility because they're not drawing the same volumes. There are organizations like NCTC that have existed, for example, for years to aggregate the demand from these smaller providers so that they do have some pricing power and some more flexibility. But I think the scale at which the operators will be impacted is really what is different. I mean, they're all going to be impacted to a certain extent by increases in prices. There's no question about that. And again, whether you're aggregating that across a network supporting 25 million subscribers or 250 subscribers, you're still going to feel the pain regardless.
Not fun. Well, do you think telecom will fare a little bit better than some other industries?
Boy, that's hard because I'm really focused on such a narrow sliver and really focused on the telecom industry. I mean, I'll offer a personal opinion here. I do think that telecom will fare better, and that is ultimately because there has already been some movement in the direction toward onshoring manufacturing and assembly as part of the Build America, Buy America, regulations for the BEAD initiative. Now, while that's not all of the telecom infrastructure, it is a portion of it. So they're already moving in that direction. And let's say you compare that with a globally diverse supply chain and something that would impact consumers more like automobiles, the auto industry. I mean, I think those certainly will be impacted more. But I don't know what we mean by more. Prices are going up. There's no question. I mean, as consumers, the increase in costs associated with the equipment is going to get passed on to us, regardless, whether that's in the form of higher priced broadband services each month or a higher price that we pay for a new car.
Right, right. Well, final question for you, Jeff. Is there anything that broadband providers can or should be doing or prioritizing to kind of ensure stability for themselves in the coming months and years?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And just in early checks with the vendors and operators as well, what we are seeing is that operators are pulling forward some of their equipment purchases in anticipation of demand and certainly higher cost components later this year. So they're again stocking their inventories and their sparing and making sure that they have parts on hand in order to continue to move forward with their strategic objectives of fiber build outs, increasing fiber home pass, for example, for cable operators moving to DOCSIS 4.0. So that's the biggest thing. They want to make sure, I think, as a service provider, you want to make sure that your supply chains are intact, they're stable. You want to know that your key suppliers have a plan in place, whether that's to move of manufacturing facility, whether it's to source components from somewhere else, just to make sure that any type of disruption in supply isn't going to be, impactful to you and your business.
Awesome. Thank you so much for clearing that up. Is there anything else you want to say about what Dell'Oro is working on or where people can go to learn more?
Yeah, I think you just go to dellorogroup.com. It's DELLORO group.com. And, we've been tracking the telecom, datacom markets, equipment markets, also enterprise and data center, all areas that are relevant here in our discussion with respect to tariffs. We track all those markets, all those vendors and suppliers, and how that will impact service providers. And just feel free to take a look at the reports that we offer. We are certainly tracking the impact of tariffs on all of our respective areas. And if you're looking for some guidance and objective opinion on that, I think we're the best source of that.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for providing your expertise today. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome anytime. I appreciate the time.